Teddy and Oscar were two close friends who always liked to spend time together. They lived in the same city, studied in the same college, and often shared their plans with each other. Both of them were tired from their busy week of classes and work, so they decided to do something different on the weekend. Instead of staying home or going to the usual places in the city, they wanted an adventure. Oscar suggested visiting a forest that was very popular for its natural beauty. Inside that forest, there was a famous stream where people usually went for swimming and relaxing. Many travelers and hikers had shared their photos of that place online, and it looked peaceful and refreshing. Teddy agreed at once because he loved water and nature. So, both friends made a plan to go on Saturday morning. The night before, they packed their bags with food, extra clothes, and some simple things they might need for the trip. They were excited, talking about how much fun it would be to swim in the stream, take pictures, and enjoy the quiet forest air. Neither of them imagined that this little trip could turn into the scariest experience of their lives. On Saturday morning, they took a bus that dropped them near the forest. The road was long and silent, with tall trees on both sides. As they walked deeper into the forest, they felt a calm and peaceful energy around them. Birds were singing, the wind was soft, and the sunlight fell beautifully between the branches. Both of them laughed and talked while walking, feeling free from all the stress of their daily lives. Finally, after about an hour of walking, they reached the famous stream. The sound of flowing water was fresh and welcoming. The place looked even more beautiful than the pictures they had seen. Smiling with joy, Teddy and Oscar quickly changed their clothes and got ready to swim. They thought the weekend was going to be perfect, but they had no idea of the horror waiting for them in the water. After walking for a long time inside the forest, Teddy and Oscar finally reached the famous stream. The sound of flowing water was soft and calming. The place looked magical, with tall green trees all around and sunlight falling on the surface of the water like shining glass. The air was fresh and the smell of wet soil made the whole area feel peaceful. Both friends were very happy. They felt like all their tiredness had gone away just by looking at the water. Oscar said with excitement, "This is more beautiful than I imagined." Teddy smiled and agreed, "It feels like we have found a secret paradise." They placed their bags on a rock nearby and started preparing to swim. The stream was wide but not too deep, and the water looked clean. Teddy dipped his hand inside and laughed, saying, "It's cold but refreshing." Oscar also touched the water and nodded with a big smile. For a moment, it felt like they were far away from all the problems of life. They changed into their swimming clothes and stepped into the water. The cool stream touched their skin and gave them a fresh feeling. They splashed water at each other and laughed loudly, their voices echoing in the quiet forest. Everything felt joyful, like a perfect weekend plan. After a few minutes, they started swimming toward the middle of the stream. The water was clear, and they could see small fish moving quickly under the surface. Sunlight danced on the ripples, making the stream look golden. Oscar floated on his back and closed his eyes, enjoying the calm sky above. Teddy swam in circles, laughing like a child. At that moment, they both believed the trip was their best decision. The forest, the water, and the peace, it all felt like a dream come true. But dreams can sometimes turn dark without warning. What was waiting for them in this peaceful stream would soon turn their joy into terror. Teddy and Oscar were enjoying themselves in the stream, laughing and splashing water like children. The cool water felt good after their long walk through the forest. For a while, everything seemed perfect. But then, something very strange caught Teddy's eyes. As he turned to swim back toward the rocks, he noticed something floating far away on the surface of the water. At first, he thought it was just a large branch or a log carried by the current. But as it slowly came closer, he froze in shock. It was not a branch, it was a human body. "Teddy, what happened?" Oscar asked, seeing the fear on his friend's face. Teddy raised his shaking hand and pointed toward the object. Oscar turned, and his smile immediately disappeared. His heart raced when he realized Teddy was right. It was a dead body floating in the water, face pale and lifeless, drifting slowly with the stream. Before they could react, Another body appeared from behind it. Then another. Soon, more dead bodies began floating toward them, as if the stream itself was pushing them closer. Their faces were white, eyes half open, and their wet hair spread across the surface like seaweed. Oscar's body turned cold with fear. This is impossible," he whispered, trembling. Teddy's breathing grew heavy as his heart pounded faster than ever before. They could not understand where these bodies had come from or why they were floating in the stream. The peaceful paradise they had admired just moments ago had turned into a nightmare. The golden sunlight on the water now looked cruel, shining over a river of death. Teddy and Oscar felt paralyzed, unable to move as the lifeless faces drifted closer. Finally, Teddy shouted, "We have to get out of here." His voice cracked with terror. Both of them swam quickly to the edge, stumbling out of the stream, their wet clothes sticking to their skin. Their happy weekend had suddenly turned into a horrifying memory they could never forget. Teddy and Oscar rushed out of the stream as fast as they could, their hearts pounding like drums inside their chests. Their wet clothes clung tightly to their bodies, making it difficult to move, but fear gave them the strength to run. Both of them were shaking, their faces pale as if all the blood had drained out. They stopped near the big rock where they had kept their bags. For a moment, they just stood there, breathing heavily, trying to understand what they had seen. Teddy's voice trembled as he said, "Oscar, those were not normal bodies. There were too many of them, just floating." His words broke off because he was too scared to continue. Oscar grabbed his arm tightly and whispered, "We should not stay here. Something is wrong with this place." His eyes kept turning back to the water, as if he expected more bodies to rise at any moment. The forest, which had felt peaceful and calm earlier, now looked frightening. The trees seemed darker, the wind sounded sharper, and even the birds had gone silent. Every small sound made them jump. A broken branch falling nearby made Teddy scream before he realized it was just the wind. Their minds were full of questions, but there was no answer. Who were those people? How did they end up in the stream? Was this a crime scene, or something beyond human understanding? Teddy wiped his wet hair away from his face and said with urgency, "We cannot waste time. We must get out of this forest now." Oscar nodded quickly. The fear in his eyes showed he was thinking the same thing. Without looking back at the water again, both friends grabbed their bags and started running. Their weekend adventure had turned into a nightmare, and now survival was the only thing they cared about. But as they stepped deeper into the forest path, they did not know the horror was only beginning. Something unseen had already started watching them. Teddy and Oscar hurried along the forest path, their feet slipping on the wet ground as they tried to escape. Their hearts were still racing from what they had seen in the stream. Every step felt heavy, but they didn't stop. The only thought in their minds was to get out of the forest as quickly as possible. After a few minutes of running, Teddy slowed down and whispered, "Do you feel that?" Oscar stopped too, breathing hard. "Feel what?" he asked. Teddy looked around nervously. "It feels like someone is behind us." Oscar's eyes widened. He tried to laugh it off, but his voice shook. "It's just in your head. We're scared, that's all." But deep inside, even Oscar could not shake off the strange feeling. The forest around them was silent, too silent. No sound of birds, no rustling of leaves, only the echo of their footsteps. It was as if the whole forest was holding its breath. Then, from behind them, came the faint sound of branches snapping. Both friends froze. Oscar turned quickly, but there was nothing. Just trees, shadows, and the long path they had come from. "See? Nothing there," he said, but his voice was weak. Teddy whispered, "No. I know something is following us." They began walking faster, almost running again. Every few steps, the sound of movement came from behind, like someone or something walking after them, carefully staying out of sight. Sometimes it was footsteps, sometimes the rustle of leaves, and sometimes low whispers they couldn't understand. Their fear grew with every moment. The more they ran, the stronger the feeling became. It was as if invisible eyes were watching their every move. Oscar finally admitted, "You're right, something is there." Teddy's face turned pale. They didn't dare look back anymore. They only ran forward, hoping they could escape, but in their hearts, both knew the presence was not going to leave them alone. Teddy and Oscar ran deeper into the forest, their legs burning with pain, but fear kept pushing them forward. The strange feeling of being followed grew stronger with every step. They didn't see anything behind them, yet the sounds continued, snapping branches, rustling leaves, and heavy footsteps that always matched their pace. "Why can't we see it?" Oscar whispered, his voice shaking. His eyes darted from one tree to another, trying to find the source of the noise. Teddy wiped the sweat from his forehead and said, "Maybe it doesn't want to be seen. Maybe it's hiding in the shadows." Suddenly, a low whisper echoed around them. It wasn't clear words, but it sounded like many voices speaking at once. Both friends stopped, their chests rising and falling quickly. The forest felt alive, as if every tree was leaning closer to listen. Teddy grabbed Oscar's hand and said, "Don't stop. Keep moving." They ran again, but the noises grew louder. Twigs cracked under invisible feet, and sometimes they heard breathing right behind them, deep, heavy, and unnatural. The air turned colder, and both could see their breath in the air even though it wasn't winter. Oscar looked back for a second, and his eyes widened in horror. "I saw something," he cried. Teddy turned quickly, but saw nothing except darkness between the trees. "What did you see?" Teddy demanded. Oscar's voice broke as he answered, "A shadow. It moved like a person, but not human." The whispers returned, circling around them, making it impossible to know where the pursuer was. Their fear grew into terror. No matter how fast they ran, the presence stayed close, never too far, never too near, just enough to keep them trapped in fear. Teddy and Oscar realized the truth. This was not a person chasing them. It was something else, something they could not fight or understand. And it wanted them to keep running. Teddy and Oscar were running with all the strength left in their bodies, but it felt like the forest had no end. The path twisted left and right, trees looked the same in every direction, and the air grew heavier as if the forest itself was trying to trap them. Behind them, the unseen pursuer never stopped. Sometimes they heard footsteps, sometimes whispers, and sometimes the sound of breathing right at their necks. It never showed itself clearly, yet its presence was stronger than ever. The boys felt like invisible hands were pushing them deeper into the forest instead of letting them escape. Oscar stumbled on a root and almost fell, but Teddy grabbed his arm and pulled him up. "Don't stop," Teddy shouted, his own voice shaking with fear. Their lungs burned, their legs felt weak, but the thought of stopping terrified them more than pain. Every time they looked back, nothing was there, only shadows moving unnaturally, as if the darkness itself was alive. The silence of the forest was broken only by their screams and the strange sounds that followed them. Hours seemed to pass, yet the path never brought them out. Instead, the trees looked thicker, taller, and darker. The sky above, which had been bright when they arrived, was now covered in heavy clouds. The forest grew colder, and a strange mist began to rise from the ground. Exhausted, Oscar cried, "Why won't it let us go?" Teddy had no answer. He just kept running, tears mixing with sweat on his face. Deep inside, both of them knew they were caught in something beyond reality. No matter how far they ran, the presence chased them. It wanted them to feel fear, to never escape. The chase became endless, turning their weekend trip into a nightmare with no way out. And in that endless forest, with shadows closing in, Teddy and Oscar realized the truth: they might never leave alive. Teddy and Oscar went into the forest for fun, but they came back with a nightmare that would never leave their minds. The stream that looked peaceful was hiding a dark secret, and the forest that felt calm turned into a trap of fear. Some people say they were only imagining things, but Teddy and Oscar still believe the shadows followed them that day. The feeling of being chased never truly ended. Even now, when they close their eyes, they hear the whispers, the footsteps, and the cold breath behind them. Maybe the forest is cursed. Maybe the stream is a grave for lost souls. Or maybe some things are not meant to be explained. So, if you ever visit a lonely forest or hear whispers in the dark, remember their story. Because once the unseen begins to follow you, there may be no escape. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more terrifying horror stories. Your support helps bring more fear to life.